Okay, I really don't have an intro for this. I have to other stuff I have to get to this afternoon, so I'm just gonna go into this as fast as I can so I can get going on the video and then editing. So we have chapter 1141 titled "Older Woman," which I'm again. I know it's referencing what Jarl is saying, but it's also like, okay, technically Gerd as well. But beyond that, I'm not exactly sure where you're referring to this, so we'll see what happens. So first off, we have the Yamato cover story where we have, Ulti is still pinned to the giant dartboard with, the daggers around her. And Who's Who has moved on to trying to start torturing Page One, which of course just makes Ulti even angrier because of course he's her little pay, and she is just holding back tears and frustration because she can't get off of the dartboard thing. We see that she has cuffs on her in this. They're very obvious. I mean, they were obvious in the last one as well. But it makes sense that Page One would be smarter, or that Page One. Well, I don't know. We don't know exactly how smart he is. That Who's Who would make sure that, like, Ulti, I know you're a Devil Fruit user. I'm going to have you chained with sea stone cuffs to make sure that it's much harder for you to try to escape, and much harder for you to try to access your, Pachycephalosaurus powers. So it makes it harder for you to fight back. And we see that Page One has chains on him as well. Chains are going to be very important throughout the course of this chapter. We're seeing that here with Ulti and Page One being chained, and then we're going to see that later in the chapter with Loki and everything. So yeah, Who's Who has just moved on to trying to start torturing Page One. I don't know why Yamato hasn't busted in yet. I understand that, like, Page One and Ulti were, enemies of Yamato. Even during Onigashima, we saw Page One or Ulti and Yamato clash at one point in time. Ulti and Yamato clash at one point because Yamato or Ulti is just like, well, why aren't you obeying Master Kaido? And Yamato's like, F my dad. Fair enough, given who Kaido is. So there's that. But the other thing that I want to point out here is the last time someone hurt her Pei, Ulti, which, for a refresher, the last time someone hurt Pei, it was Big Mom. And Ulti did not flinch at the idea of trying to attack Big Mom in retaliation for Big Mom attacking Page One. So Ulti is more scared right now because she's pinned and she can't do anything in order to try to protect Page One, or at least against Big Mom, she could at least do something to try to avenge Page One, even though Page One obviously wasn't dead because he's here now. But, so there's that. So we go into the chapter, and we pick up, it's been maybe a little bit longer since, a little bit of time has passed, because now Nami and Road, along with the two guards that they had found, that the group had found knocked out and beaten up in the castle, with one of them knocked out and the other one kind of giving them a bit of a brief explanation as to there were two random people who popped up in the castle somehow, and one of them looked like Shanks, and then they beat us up. One of the ladies had weird arrows. So there's that. So they're on their way back to the village at the moment, and Nami is just exasperated right now. She's like, what a waste. We've been trekking through this massive castle all day, and we don't even have a single giant diamond, pearl, or piece of gold to show for it. And, like, they're done looking through the whole castle. They probably looked through. Nami's like, we are going to search this treasure room thoroughly before we leave, and then we're going to do another once over to see if we missed anything, because Nami and gold and treasure and everything else like that. And it's like, even one of those treasure chests from like the treasure room would have been enough for Nami to, like, Scrooge McDuck her way through. So there's that. And So Nami is just exasperated about this, and uh, Road is behind her, and he's just like, Namitaso, you really shouldn't say such things out loud, is what he's thinking. And then Nami is just like, it's not like I care about this Loki monster, you know. So she knows, you know, this implies that Luffy and Zoro have gone off to go to deal with Loki, to go with, you know, freeing Loki, or well, Luffy's intention is to free Loki. Zoro's intention is to find out whether or not Loki is a trustworthy individual. We'll find out how that goes. And they've got the 2 guards in the ship. They're on the Skval, whatever thing it is, cloud boat. And one of the guards is just like, Loki, giant diamond. Like, he's coming, you know, going in and out of consciousness and hearing part of Nami's complaining. And then Rode's just like, no, it's nothing to worry about, pal. Just lie back and get some rest. And then Rode is thinking again, Namitaso, can you maybe tone it down a bit? I don't know if he's supposed to be whispering to her about that, or, yeah, he's just like whispering to her about that, I think. And she's like, where's all the treasure? Namitaso. He's just like trying not to, like, okay, can we not? I really don't need to get beat up again today. And I'm on the, so far this is on the, looking like the road to me being beat up again today, and I really don't want that to happen. Side note, it's going to happen later today. Road has had a day. He's been electrocuted. He has been beaten up. He, I think, was electrocuted again. And then he's going to get beat up again one more time in this chapter, and then fall from a great height and get hurt. So Rhodes had a day at the moment. To be fair, the trapping humans and putting them in his diorama set was his own doing, which led to him getting beat up by Gerd and Goldberg in the first place, which also led to him getting electrocuted in the first place because reasons. And then, to be fair, you know, Road also just likes getting beaten up, so there's that. Because he's a masochist. So we cut back to Frankie's tour group. You know, the Treasure Tree tour group, as it's referred to, which at the moment is just Frankie and Ripley, with Ripley, you know, giving, you know, Frankie, you know, tour, you know, story, that was this was this. I get to go on a museum tour later today anyway. I'm going to go to the Museum of American Speedway Museum here in Lincoln, and I haven't been there yet, but we're going to go with my dad and some people from our church, because one of the guys that goes to our church is a docent there. So we're going to go to that, and that'll hopefully be fun. I haven't been. I'm not the biggest racing fan, but I'm like, sure, I'll go. It's fun. I gotta go do something with my dad, that type of thing. So, tour guide. So they're going around, and Frankie is just like taking in everything around him, which I would just be in awe at this point in time. I would be in awe for a lot of the stuff in One Piece. But he's just like, ain't surprising, but there's a hell of a lot to take in here. It's incredible. And Ripley's like, yeah, to summarize, we basically live on the tree's enormous branches. So we basically live on the tree's enormous branches. And each one has a long and rich history of its own. So she's like, we get like this little diorama thing where it's just like, we see the different branches. And then because the branches are so big, which we already kind of saw when we saw like the scale of Elbaf, that the branches are so big that they end up being able to house villages on them. And she's explaining that, you know, we have like the trees that we live on, and like the branches in the trees are what the villages are built on, and possibly built out of too, for like the wood on that. And I don't remember if we saw it when they were at the Warrior Spring, but I would assume that just because of the grand scale of this tree in general, that there are places on the tree where like soil has built up. Like we mentioned that, or one of them mentioned that the, I think it was Gerd that mentioned that like the spring that's part of the Warrior Spring, that, you know, it had kind of like fossilized, and then like it eroded enough, and that's why there's like sand there, so they have like a beach around there. So the Elbaf is just so massive, and the trees and the branches are just so massive, that there are places where there's like other trees and other things growing out of the dirt and the soil and stuff like that that has been built up on the tree. Or out of like the fossilized ground of like other parts of the tree rotting away or stuff like that to make soil. So I just that's just amazing. So we're getting looks at that. And then they look over, Frankie looks over and he sees like a tree that looks like, or a branch that looks like part of it has been lopped off. And he's like, wow, and that one? And she's like, yeah, that branch was where Hugin Village used to be. Lightning struck it one day and it went up in flames. It had gotten too dry and old, so there was no way to put it out. The entire branch was severed from the tree to ensure the fire wouldn't spread to any of the other villages. So that is kind of, I guess, answers one of the questions in regards to the fact of like, well, and I don't think this is referring to the village that Big Mom had been in, because if that was the case, that would have been, you know, the 63 years ago type of a thing. This looks like maybe a little more recent, maybe. And that wasn't a lightning strike. That was a child throwing a tantrum, and then the village got caught on fire. Plus, we know that, you know, Mother Carmel had been able to turn the fire into Pandora and then, like, put out the fire. So the village didn't keep burning, so there wouldn't have been a reason to cut the village off, to cut off the branch that the village was on to prevent the fire from spreading. So we see that. But, you know, so Ripley's explaining, you know, there was a village, got struck by lightning. That specific branch that it was on was just really old and dry. So it had just gotten so brittle and everything that it wouldn't have been worth trying to do that. So they probably evacuated everybody out of the village, along with, you know, grab valuables or something like that. Evacuate them out of the village. And then they just have, like, you know, some of the other giants that are big enough and strong enough just go with their weapons to chop off the branch, and then like the branch falls, and if they like aim it the right way, they can maybe aim it to land in the ocean or land somewhere down in the you know, the underworld area, the realm of the dead area where Loki is, where all the mountains are, and, you know, land down there, and then they're able to use that to like put out the fire, but they still couldn't salvage the village. So that's probably what happened. And Frankie's like, I see. Bet that was a tough call. I guess even atom trees aren't immune to time, which is true. That might be a hint, because we know that the Oro Jackson, you know, Roger's ship was made out of atom wood. So I guess that might be a reference to the fact of like, even though that ship sailed around the world so much and did so much of the journey and everything for Roger, we don't know where that ship is now. We don't know where the Oro Jackson is now. You know, it might be something where Rayleigh knows where it is, or it might be something where, you know, there's the theory that Scopper is the man marked by flames, and that he still has the Oro Jackson, but he like painted it something so it looks different, and that has the final poneglyph or whatever. So we don't know where the ship is. That's still debate. And Ripley continues like, that's Elbaf's biggest weakness, fire and lightning. Given the way that this is phrased, I'm sure that's going to be a reference to something down the line, because when you think of Norse mythology, which Elbaf is very much based on Norse mythology, you get, you know, you think of like lightning and like, oh, well, that's clearly a reference to like Thor, because like thunder was very associated with Thor, and then, you know, with the MCU and everything, it makes sense that they made it that like Thor's power with Mjolnir is lightning based, that he has, you know, lightning abilities. And stuff, enhanced and helped trained by Mjolnir and stuff, and then, you know, continued with other things that we see Thor be able to do throughout Ragnarok and into Thor: Love and Thunder and everything. But fire and lightning are just generally dangerous no matter what. In regards to having like all of these other various comparisons. So we'll see what happens with that. But that might be a reference to something. That might be like there's like a weapon that can harness both fire and lightning or something, and like someone might have that. That might be something to a reference of something that Loki has or that Loki can do. So we'll see what happens there. we cut back to the Western Village feast where we see Usopp is just sloshed, which I'm kind of hoping is a reference to the live action where they were at the Baratier and Usopp just got sloshed and then like was talking to Mihawk and then literally led Mihawk over to the table, which I find hilarious. And like Oda, I think, was definitely involved in some of the stuff for like the live action that's been, they finished up filming recently, I believe, for season 2. So we'll see what we'll see what happens with that. Maybe we'll get another moment where Usopp is drunk again. That was funny. Drunk Usopp was just funny. We don't see drunk Usopp all that often in the story anyway. Because Usopp isn't necessarily known for drinking all that much, but this is also giant mead or whatever else they're serving them, so it's probably quite strong. So there's that. So he's like talking to Nami because Nami's now returned to the village with Road, and she's made her way to Usopp, and he's like, "Where did you sneak off to, Nami?" Because he's just drunk, which is funny, and he's like, "Haven't seen Luffy or Zoro anywhere either." And she's like, "Oh, they're probably just exploring." He's like, that's right, good thinking." Oh, Usopp. And then Usopp turns and kind of does the whole inquisitive drunk question to Jarl, and he's like, "Jarl, you've got to meet our genius navigator," and he pulls Nami over, and Jarl's like, "Yep, ain't she a beauty?" And Usopp, who's just like, "Ha, you pervy old man. First of all, just calling Nami pretty does not make him a perv. That's not a problem. That's not a bad thing. That's a compliment. What Road kept doing was pervy. And he's like, and Usopp is just like, "Yeah, you pervy old man. Is she your type?" It's just like, Usopp, jumping around on questions here. And Jarl is just like, "No, my type. Honestly, I'm into older women." And Usopp's going to make the same comment here in a second. What woman is older than you? Barring unless they're going to make it that, like, Eam is a woman, and that's a reference there where, like, Eam would be Jarl's type because she'd be an older woman. Because, Jarl is, 403 or 5 or something like that, 400-something years old. Kureha would be like a young whippersnapper in his opinions, and he'd be like, "Nah, she's not in my age range. She's too young." Type of a thing. And I'm just like, okay. But it's like the older woman references, like, Ripley is older than Scalper, and then, we don't know of any other giant couples at the moment, but just like, and Usopp jumps up and whacks the dagger on Jarl's head, and he's just like, "You're the oldest guy in the world. There's no way you'll find a woman like that." And whacks the sword, and Jarl's just like, "Ah!" And all the other giants are like, "Elder Jarl!" But they're like, "Please don't do that." And then it's Dory grabs Usopp, and it's just like, "Usopp, keep your mitts off the Elder's sword." It's like, "Don't do that." And he's just like, "Hey, anyone want to try pulling out Excalibur?" And all the other giants are just like, "Please don't do that." Jarl's like in the background, "Please don't try that. Please don't try that. The blood loss will kill me." Or it's Broggy is like, don't, the blood loss will kill him." And then we cut over to see Nami is now just like talking to Brook in this panel, and Brook has his shark guitar out, which I love whenever Brook pulls out his shark guitar, because it means we're going to get music. I won't be surprised if in the anime, if they at least add in something here where Brook's doing a little bit more of like a performance type of a thing. But not only has his shark guitar out, which I love his shark guitar. I'm sure there's like a version of that you could buy. But he has a shark guitar out. And then his head is not on his shoulders where it's supposed to be. It has detached and it's kind of floating around like he can do with his powers. Which I wish Brook would do more often. That's kind of funny, in all honesty. And Nami's kind of used to it at this point in time. And Brook is just like, "Oh my, he's so drunk." And Nami's like, "Look who's talking." Because Brook is drunk too, which is saying something again, because I was going to make a comment about, like, well, Brook's blood alcohol level would be just alcohol because he has no blood. Yo! Um, Again, funny. And then we cut around, we cut back a little bit, and Usopp is just happy, and um, and Nami's talking, and she's moved over to go sit by Jinbei, who's just relaxing and drinking his mead or whatever, because Jinbei, I think, has the highest alcohol tolerance of the crew, and then it's either because it's Jinbei, Nami, and Zoro that have the highest ones, and I can never remember who's first, well, now second or third because of Nami and Zoro. But those three are the ones that have the highest alcohol tolerance out of the crew. All of the rest of them have, I don't know, Robin, I don't know how much we've seen Robin drink in the past, but moving on. So Nami is just like, I guess it can't be helped though. This was his dream, making it all the way here. So she's happy for Usopp and everything. She knows like Usopp and Luffy have been like dreaming of getting to Elbaf ever since they met Dory and Bragi on Little Garden, which is fair. And then that was then kind of doubled down on specifically for Usopp with interacting with Oimo and Kashi and Islabi. So they're all just happy. And Jinbei's like, haha, you can tell, because he's happy for Usopp too. They're just like sitting and watching and everything. And again, I like with Fishman Island right now, we're kind of getting to rehash or getting to re-see, kind of like Nami and Jinbei interacting for the first time, and Jinbei telling Nami and part of the crew that's there about what happened with Fisher Tiger and Otohime and like Arlong by extension. So it's like we're kind of getting to like re-watch what's going on with that right now. And so it's just like we're comparing this between like now with as friendly as like Luffy as Nami and Jinbei are with each other, which how much she clearly trusts him and everything after everything that happened on Whole Cake Island and then happened on with Wano and everything. Getting to see where like their relationship kind of started, their friendship started, to where it is now is kind of interesting. Then we cut over to Sanji, surrounded by a bunch of legs and feet, which is funny. And he's like, something's off. Where's Gerd? So he's like trying to figure out where Gerd went. And then we cut away from the party a little bit to where we see Gerd and Road. And Gerd is currently looking over the two guards that Road and Nami brought back from the castle. She's like, they have bone fractures, and one of them looks like they've been stabbed. You really think a normal human could cause that kind of damage? She's like, what happened? Out with it. These guards are no jokes. What are you up to? So she is scolding Road. By the way, we get a height comparison now between Road and Gerd. Road is a bit taller than Gerd. Given how Oda draws women. Road is a bit taller than Gerd. And he's just like, nothing, I was merely up there doing research so I can improve my block castle. Probably not the best idea to bring that up right now, given that you were just, crucified literally for the fact that you had a bunch of humans trapped in your castle, so not a good idea. But I found the front door all sliced up and the guards were... And he's just like trying to placate. Like we see the two guards asleep in the background. Because, it makes sense that they took them to Gerd because Gerd is a doctor. She's the doctor of the New Giant Warrior Pirates. And she's just glaring at Road right now. And she's like, are you hot? You're sweating bullets. He's like, And he's thinking, because you keep staring at me? She's like, I'm going to question the guards. And he's like, no, they need rest. And he's like trying to make her not do it. And she's like, well, I'm going to tell Elder Jarl then. And he's like, but that'll ruin the party for him. We can't do that till you get all the facts straight. Nobody likes a party pooper. And she like turns and glares at him again. And he's like, and if this Loki business gets out before Luffy, Tasso, and the others return, I'll be labeled a co-conspirator. Honestly, Loki just takes off once... Or hopefully Loki just takes off once he's free. He can raise hell overseas for all I care. And Road's just like still thinking, the only thing that worries me is that red hair look-alike. And like we got to see, I love this little side panel that we get here where it's just like Road is just like, And then we just see Gerd jumping up behind him with her axe in hand. And then whack. whacks him on the head, broadside of the axe on his head. She's like, spit it out, you know something, don't you? So I found an axe picture that would be perfect for Gerd. It's like a mountaineer's axe that has like heart-shaped designs in it, which is just adorable. And I'm like, this is from like the 14th century in Japan, the Muromachi period. And I'm just like, I want this axe. I have no need whatsoever for an axe, but I want this axe, and it looks perfect for Gerd, or perfect for like, I kind of wouldn't mind if like later on they end up like if Scopper shows back up again because like they need him to help with fighting or whatever, or he's like, okay, my son got captured, I have to pull out the axe of love, and he pulls out this giant axe from somewhere that he got from home, like maybe Ripley gave it to him as an anniversary gift or something, and he has this giant axe that have hearts carved in it. And he goes and he's like, okay, give me back my son. He's like threatening them, and they're like, oh no, it's Scupper Gabon. What are we gonna do? It's the Mountain Eater. I mean, out of all the gods and knights, I would say the one that would definitely recognize him the most would probably be Summers. But we don't know how old Killingham or Carringham is yet either, so he might recognize him too. But the others, I would hope the gods and knights stay fairly up to date for stuff, but we'll see. It depends on how much they're taught about history. But yeah, Road just got smacked into the ground again, and we know canonically that Gerd is older than Road by at least like 10 years or something like that, because Road's only 63 years old. And Gerd was, I don't remember how old she was, because Hyrule is 18 years older than that, than Road and Loki and Goldberg. But I don't remember, Gerd might just be 11 years older, I'm not sure, but she is an older woman, so that's kind of another reference there to the chapter. So, next page is double page spread. We cut down to the underworld, or the realm of the dead area, where Luffy and Zoro have now shown up at where Loki is tied to the tree, tied to that. And again, we get the nice big shot of like him with the giant freaking hammer behind his back. And Zoro's just like, hey Luffy, this isn't the scene I pictured from your description. And Luffy's like, he wasn't like this when I saw him. He's like, I'm not the one that made him all bloody and in pain and possibly, passed out. I didn't do that. He wasn't like this when I left, I swear. Type thing. And he's just like, the animals have been attacked too. Hang in there, guys. And Luffy's like trying to shout at Loki to wake him up. It's like, Loki, what happened? Who did this? And Zoro's just like, he's big even for a giant. And he's like, Loki, say something. And Loki's like, he's barely breathing, but he is breathing, so he's not dead. And like, that's, I guess, good for the purposes of finding out whether or not Loki is good or bad, is, well, he's not dead yet, so we can still find out. And Luffy jumps up and he's going to get ready to start unlocking the cuffs because he has the key with him, of course, now. And Zoro's just like, don't give him the key yet, Luffy. This changes things. And he's like, it's not like, and Luffy's like, it's not like you can go on a rampage with those wounds. Come on, Zoro, lend me a hand. And Luffy touches the Sea Prism Stone cuffs, and it's just like, where he gets all wobbly and weak and everything whenever that happens, whenever any of the bunch of Devil Fruit powers touch the stone, touch Sea Prism Stone. And Zoro's just like, those chains must be made of sea stone. And he looks over at the animals, and it's just like, what could have taken out all these beasts? Hold on, Luffy. Let's wait a bit. And then, arguing again, and he's like, this giant's about to die. We gotta help him. And Zoro's just like, we don't owe him a thing. I haven't spoken with him, but we shouldn't take his bad reputation lightly. This guy's as big as ours. Which, again, is saying something. Also, we get a side view of Zoro's, like the goggle-looking things that Road put on him, and it looks like they have some pretty intricate design around the top, around the headband part, which is kind of nice. That'll be interesting to see. And Luffy's like, Zoro is saying, if we let him loose, it may not end pretty, even for a country like Elbas. So just wait. And Zoro then decides to kick Loki. Yeah, because that's going to help all of your problems. He kicks Loki, which just makes Loki just scream out in pain. And Luffy's just like, Zoro, what the heck are you doing? And he's just like, well, it seems those bloody wounds are definitely the real deal, so he's not faking. Yeah, I would hope he's not faking. That would be a horrible thing to try to fake. And Loki is just like, damn it, what the hell? As he's just like breathing out heavily after being kicked, after being stabbed by a Cerberus, and being kicked and possibly stabbed several times by Gunko's arrows. Well, kicked by Gunko with her arrows help. So Loki is just, he's like, and flops down and like passes out again. And Luffy's like, oh, he's dead. And Zoro's like, if he was dead, that was simply his fate. And Luffy's just like, you can be a real jerk. And Zoro's like, fine, I'll go along with unlocking him, but let's leave some sea prism around one of his legs. We can talk it out more once he's regained consciousness. And Luffy's just like, all right then, let's go fetch Chopper. And Zoro's like, the library is way too far away. I'll bet we'll find the doctor partying back at the village, though. Technically, yes, there is a doctor back at the village, or at least there was a little earlier in this chapter, because that's where Gerd is. And I highly doubt she's the only doctor in the village, but blah, blah, blah. And Chopper is busy listening to Robin read things about the Void Century and the Harley text and stuff like that. So we'll see what happens with that whenever we cut back to that. I kind of hope Robin like makes notes of the Harley text so she can take it with them when they head off, in case she wants to like reference something in it when she's looking over stuff. When they get to, when they finally get to Laugh Tale and everything, and she's reading through the true history there, she'll have like this other, the Harley text that she can reference and like be like, oh, well, that's referencing this that was in the Harley text. Type of thing. So I hope she does that. So Zoro's jumped up on Loki and he's like starting to unlock all the cuffs. And he's just like, if they find out we freed Loki, they'll banish us, won't they? And Luffy's just like, then we'll be banished. We've got no choice. I gotta go call a doctor. And he's like, and we should stock up on meat too. And Zoro's just like, knowing you won't be at your best if you don't eat. And he's like, there's plenty of meat over there. And he's referring to all of the animals that got beat up by Gunko, possibly killed. And Luffy's just like, no way! Don't even joke about something like that. Those guys are my buddies. I can't just go hunting. I can just go hunting in the mountains later. And this is, of course, the reference to the fact that Luffy has befriended these creatures earlier in the arc, and then also this is referencing to when he was on Ruskaina and he became friends with all of the animals that were on Ruskaina, or with a good chunk of the animals that were on Ruskaina. So he's like, well, I'm not going to eat you because you're my friends now. Also, this really harkens back to like in Drum Island when they got Chopper, and there were like the jokes of like, oh, Chopper's the emergency food supply. Because when they first met Chopper, Luffy and Sanji kept chasing Chopper around the castle because Sanji wanted to make like venison. Yeah, that'll be a great idea, Sanji. Not. So there's chasing that. So it's a reference to that. It's just like those guys are my buddies. You don't eat your buddies. And then Zoro's just like, meat's meat, isn't it? And Luffy's just like, anyone who becomes my friend is off the menu. And Zoro's like, all right, my bad. To be fair, the other Straw Hats, they did not go to Ruskaina. They did not meet the animals that Luffy befriended there. We'll see if that ever happens. I don't expect it to, but that would be interesting to see. Plus, I mean, like, they met Tsurume because like Luffy was with them when they befriended Tsurume, the Kraken and everything. So it's just, like, they know that Luffy makes friends with giant animals. So there's that. And Luffy's gonna run off to go find a doctor. And then they hear a noise, and then they look, or Luffy's like, I guess both of their observation hockeys kick in, and they look up. And down, falling from the sky, falling from the sun realm to the underworld, to the realm of the dead, is the sky ship, the cloud ship, falling. And it's just like, please don't do dead. And they're like, ah. And we look up and we get, it's all of the new giant warrior pirates plus Sanji are on the Skval whatever thing, cloud boat, as it's falling from the sky. And my answer to this was, this just reminded me of Marineford, and very recently with Hachinosu during Egghead, where at Marineford, where Luffy and all the prisoners and everything from Impel Down showed up on the ship, and it's flying through the air and like falling. And the same thing basically happened at Hachinosu with like Garp ship being launched into the air and then, you know, flying for a short period of time as they attacked Hachinosu and everything. So it's just like, it reminded me of that. This moment kind of reminded me of that, which is funny. And Hyrule is shouting, it's just like, I told you. No, it's I think it's Road that's saying, I told you island clouds can't sustain themselves in the realm of the dead. And Hyrule's like, I thought we could use their last bit of buoyancy before they disappeared. And then Sanji is just like, I'll save you, Gerd. And then they're just like, we couldn't waste time getting a lift. This is an emergency. If Loki escapes, all hell will break loose, as they're like falling from the sky. And they're just on one of the cloud ships. They're not on their actual ship. So it's falling, the ship is falling, and they're just like, it's all over, we're gonna die. So they're just quickly getting closer to the ground. And Hyrule's like, sorry guys, I made the wrong call. It's gonna get drawn out in the anime, I know, but it's funny. And then Goldberg is just like, I don't blame you. You were thinking about the safety of Elbaf. And then Rhoda's just like, what a life, because they're just so terrified. And they're falling. And then Luffy used Gumu Gumu balloon or Fusen balloon, where he blows himself up, probably bigger than normal than he usually does when he does this, but he like blows up, and that causes the ship to land. So it's gonna bounce and land, and then Hyrule's like, Straw, like, thank you, Luffy smiling, and then the ship kind of bounces up, because it's still like, drop something like that on a trampoline or whatever, bounces off, same thing with the balloon. And Sanji and Gerd fall off the ship, so they kind of land near them, and then the ship with the guys on it kind of goes flying a little bit. But then they like rush back as fast as they can, and they're like, thank you. Even walking away from that hurt is a miracle. If it weren't for you, we'd be dead for sure. So all of them have like, the big bumps on their heads and everything else like that. And like Hyrule is now just like begging Luffy. It's just like, we had to hurry though. I'm glad we made it in time. Please don't go through with it. Your plan to release Loki, Straw Hat. Please don't go through with your plan to release Loki, Straw Hat. And Gerd's like, I forced Road to spill the beans for like the explanation. That's all we need. That's clearly what happened. And Road's just like, forgive me, Luffy, Tasso. And Hyrule is considering it's just like, you can't trust Loki. He's a cunning, ruthless trickster, black-hearted and beyond redemption. Since we were kids, even when he did or said something nice, it was all a lie. He's a fiend who betrays others without a second thought. Loki's a threat to the entire world. And Zoro's just like, I'm afraid you're already too late. And they look over at Loki, and Loki stands up, and like we see the chains falling off of him. He does still have the one chain that's on his left ankle right now. It's still intact. To be fair, I probably would have left chains on both ankles if I was in this situation. But I also wouldn't be in the situation where I'm going to release the guy tied to a tree that everybody keeps telling me is bad. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Not doing that. And Loki stands up, and like we see him in comparison to Luffy, and again, it's just like Ripley was carrying Frankie around like an action figure earlier on, and like that's not even that, that's like, okay, that, they're like a doll size. This Luffy looks like he is like an ant right now compared to Loki for the size difference that we are seeing between the two of them. And all the giants are like, Loki, because they're like, oh no, that's not good. And then Luffy is just like, wait, I could have sworn he was out cold. And Loki reaches back and grabs the hammer that was tied to the tree with him. And Hyrule is screaming, stop it, Loki, put Ragnar down. So, Loki's free. Loki's 90-something% free, like 95% free. He still has a chain on his ankle. We'll see what happens with that. That might be like the decision here, depending on like what the heck happens with Loki. Good place to end the chapter. We don't have a break next week, so we'll have another chapter. At least we're supposed to have another chapter next week, so this will be fun. And we get Loki at his full height now, so we will see how this ends up going. There's multiple ways that this can go. Loki could try to attack the group, including Luffy and such. Try to attack that group. Just to cause a bunch of damage there. That's possibly going to happen. He might be like, okay, now I'm going to go and avenge my friends and go to try to track down, Gunko and Shamrock for what they did to the animals and for attacking him. That type of a thing. That's a possibility for what he'll do. Again, things that keep getting brought up when it comes to Loki and everything for like, having Loki be the obvious bad guy in this is going to be the very obvious thing of like, okay, well, if Loki's the bad guy in Elbaf, that's kind of like the obvious answer there for like what to do with that. So is that really what Oda's going to do? Is he going to throw it on its head? There's all the different theories right now about like Harald. Like, was Harald actually bad or just really naive and easily tricked by the world government? Was he actually evil? And Loki found out about what was going on, so he's like, okay, I'm actually going to try to take the blame for what Dad did because he was such a hero to the citizens, but I'll take the blame for being the bad guy. And then Hyrule can be the one that is actually like seen as the true heir type of a thing. Again, we'll see what this all gets, what this amounts to and everything based around stuff. And once we get like the full flashbacks and everything for like, Loki and Hyrule and Harald and everything, and their connections there. For like all of that different stuff and everything. And is it just like Loki truly isn't a cursed prince where he actually is bad, or is it where he gives off the appearance of being bad because he feels that Hyrule should be the one who is the true prince, that should be the true heir, that should be the one who can lead the giants into the future in a better way than what their father tried to do, or maybe implementing some of their father's ideas but in a much better way that doesn't involve becoming part of the world government and betraying their citizens and everything else like that. So we'll see what happens with that. To be fair, it would be interesting if we see like Loki bounding through the woods after he gets like the other ankle cuff off, depending on what happens. And then, or the obvious answer for like what the funny thing is going to be here is like Loki tries to go and he doesn't realize the chain is still on his ankle, and then he tries to go and then he goes and then he's just like falls. Now, in regards to the hammer, obviously the most famous hammer associated with Norse mythology is of course Mjolnir, which Loki has had this hammer strapped to his back the whole time that we've been seeing him. Since we got to Elbaf and everything, he's had this hammer tied to his back, and if it was really this type of a horrible, powerful weapon, they may have tried to get it away from him before they chained him to the tree, but maybe they couldn't. It was like, either we can get the axe away from him, or we can chain him to the tree, but we can't do both, so we just gotta focus on chaining him to the frickin' tree, depending on, how that's gonna end up playing out, because given how much that incident is hyped up, we'll probably end up seeing part of that in a flashback. So we'll see what happens there, with pinning Loki to the tree and getting him all chained up 6 years ago. However much of a situation happened there, but put Ragnar down is what it's called. Ragnar is what it's called, is what Hyrule calls it. Now I've tried looking this up. Now there is Ragnar in like Norse mythology and stuff like that. There is a Ragnir that is a video game character that I couldn't find much about. I think there's like a Lord of the Rings character that's called Ragnir, but I couldn't find anything specifically that was like Ragnir from Norse mythology. Now, this could be something where it's not quite translated correctly, and it could actually be Ragnar, but we'll see what happens with that. So we'll see how that goes. But that's what I have for this video. No break next week, so we'll have a new chapter. Yep. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.